everybody. Welcome back to Tea Time. That's right. It's Monday night, 8 o'clock. It's May 4th. And I have to say, first thing I have to say off the bat is happy birthday to my mom. My beautiful mom turned 82 today, and we just finished Zooming with her. You know, she's in West Palm with my dad, and we got the family, and it was really nice. We sang happy birthday, and it's very different. It's very different. She said she'll never forget this birthday, and that's for sure. I also want to say it's National Nurses Week, so I want to thank all the nurses out there on the front line doing what they do. I really, God bless you all. It's Nurses Week all the time as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, my weekend was pretty much quiet. I mean, the weather was beautiful, so I kind of like went out in the backyard. You know, I don't have a green thumb, but I tried. I tried to plant the hydrangea that my daughter gave me. I did. I planted it, and hopefully it will take. But listen, you know, my hour goes fast, and I want to introduce to you someone who I met, a friend. Rob Bartlett is here with me, and I'm excited. Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, Theresa. If you're excited, you really got to get out more.
I know, but I tell you the truth, I don't go out unless I have to. I really don't. But listen, I want everyone to know who you are, to know what you've done, what you're doing. So I'm going to toot your horn a little bit. If any of my fun facts are wrong, please correct me. But Rob Bartlett is a comedian. He's an actor. He's an impressionist. He's a writer. And you really gained widespread fame when you were on Imus in the morning show. And you did that show for 31 years, right?
Yep.
Wow. Amazing.
I was there with him when he was still at NBC before NBC got sold and WFAN picked up the frequency, and Imus got a contract with WFAN.
Right.
And I had been basically like a contract player up to that point, getting paid on a per bit basis. But when they moved over to WFAN, they offered me a full-time position, and I was there for the duration.
It's amazing. Yeah. But I want to back up and take you all the way back. You were born in Brooklyn?
Yep. Flatbush.
What part of Brooklyn? Flatbush?
Flatbush. I grew up on Schenectady Avenue and Farragut Road. I went to PS 208.
Wow.
And then when I was 9 or 10, I guess we moved out to Massapequa Park. And lived there. Went to Farmingdale High School, where I got involved with the drama club, the Green Room Club. And got married and then lived in Bayside for a while, which was great because I was right by Jimmy's Comedy Alley. And
that's where I grew up. I grew up in Bayside, and I was at Jimmy's Comedy Alley all the time.
Great club. It's a great town too. I love living in Bayside. And then when we started a family, I moved back out to Long Island. My wife is from Queens. She's from Flushing originally, and
okay.
So, but we moved out here because of the schools. I thought the schools were so great, and then of course we proceeded to have all the boys go to Catholic high school.
So, my mom went to Flushing High actually, and it's weird because we come full circle. She's a snowbird, so when she's up here, that's where right by Queens College in Flushing, right there. So you moved back to Farmingdale, and then in the early 80s, I mean, obviously you were doing drama in high school. You were very involved in the arts and theater. In the 80s, you were one of 3 members of an improv group called the Identical Triplets.
Yep.
And it was you, Bob Nelson, and Eddie Murphy.
Yep.
So of course you all looked identical.
That was the joke. That was I get it. And a lot of the stuff we did kind of were really, really bad riffs on that very thing. It came out of the fact that we were all really, really close friends. And
how did you meet? How did the 3 of you meet? Did you meet at a comedy club? Did you meet in the area? How did you meet Bob and Eddie?
We met at Richard M. Dixon's White House Inn, which was a showcase club, the only showcase club that I'm aware of on Long Island in the late 70s, early 80s. And we became regulars, the 3 of us, and we loved working with each other. We became friends. The three of us became friends, and we would go out and do movies and go out to eat and bowling and all that kind of stuff. And one night we promised ourselves we weren't going to end up at the club, because that seemed to be our social life, was always being at the club.
Right.
And so we tried to go bowling. We couldn't get a lane. Tried to go to a movie. We couldn't get in. And so, of course, we went back to Dixon and kind of took over the show. There was a show going on, and we just kind of took it over. And, in those days, we were pretty bold. We made up the rules as we saw fit, because we were among that first wave of comics on Long Island. So we pretty much made up the rules,
Right.
So we went on stage, and the three of us started by just doing an improv. Eddie was in the winter. Eddie had this fur coat hoodie thing that made him look like an Eskimo. And so we started doing this improv where he was an Eskimo, and Bobby was a hunter, and I was a walrus who sounded like Ringo Starr. And that was the improv. And we went on for 20 minutes. And I remember it being pretty magical. I mean, of course, if I would have watched it now, I'd probably be cringing. And I said, we should always try to work together. And so the identical triplet thing came out of that, where we would get booked on the same shows together.
Right.
We would do little snippets of our own acts. And then we had these little things that we would do, little connective tissue stuff with the three of us together. And we would always end with improv. And the improv stuff carried on after the group broke up. And we were just on our own. The improv stuff went on to the East Side Comedy Club, where Bobby and I would run, even if we weren't on the same show together, he'd show up at a show I was on, or I'd show up at a show he was on. And we'd always wind up on stage doing what we used to call Bob and Rob. And we would do these improvs. We had two divers, two cavemen discovering fire, and we just had these things back and forth, and we were always trying to make each other laugh. That's kind of the triplet story. We just tried to make each other laugh. I remember being in Fort Lauderdale doing the comic strip. It was Eddie's first road gig, and Eddie and I were sitting there, and we would go to the mall to go to the movies during the day, because there's really nothing else to do, on a rainy day in Fort Lauderdale. And we would do, sit in the mall, and we'd go to the arcade, which was in Nathan's, in this mall in Fort Lauderdale. And we would just do these characters like for hours, and like make fun of the people as they walk by, and sitting there. And the idea was just to make each other laugh. And we used to
a lot of observing, right? It's observing and just soaking it in.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of fun. It's like hanging out with your friends, and like you said, trying to make each other laugh, which is great. And you went on to, I mean, how long did the three of you do that? And then you kind of like you went on to do and have a career in stand-up comedy for 10 years as a headliner.
Yeah, it was funny. It wasn't really a formal breakup, but we just, as we started getting bigger, I guess, in each becoming headliners, it became cost prohibitive for clubs to want to put the three of us together. But we would still, whenever we were close, I mean, we were in town or whatever, we would always wind up at some point doing stuff together, whether it was me or Eddie, or Bobby and Eddie and me. We always kind of did that as an aside, not official or formal, but just because we enjoyed, working with each other.
When you have that kind of friendship and that kind of rapport and that kind of funny, it's magical.
It really was, because we knew what each other, we first of all, we had that trust, and each other, we knew what made each other laugh. And there was nothing better than making Eddie laugh, because he had the greatest laugh on the planet. So that was always one of the motivators, I mean, we were in Fort Lauderdale, and we were actually on the plane going down to Fort Lauderdale. The night before, Bobby was doing Merv Griffin. Merv Griffin used to do, I guess, a week from Lincoln Center every year. And Bobby got booked on. He was with APA at the time, and his manager booked him on Merv Griffin. And he got bumped. And so his agent came back into the green room to tell him. And we were there. Richie was there. A bunch of us were there to cheer him on. And we're in the green room with him, and then the agent came back and said, it's not going to happen. Somebody went long or whatever. And,
wow.
And he said, do you happen to know any black comics? Because Saturday Night Live is looking for one. The guy that they had hired, Charlie Barnett, who was a genius street performer. I mean, really genius. They discovered that he was illiterate. He didn't know how to read, and so he couldn't do scripts.
Oh, wow.
So they were kind of at a loss. And so on the plane the next day, I remember Bobby turning to me and says, "Don't you dare tell Eddie." And so the next day, Eddie and I are on the plane. I happened to mention it to him, and he became obsessed the entire plane ride. All he could talk about was getting an audition for SNL.
Sure.
And got off the plane, and he was on the phone to Richie Ticken in a heartbeat and said, "You guys got to get me an audition for Saturday Night Live." And they got him one. And
21 years old, right? He was 21 at the time, I think.
Jerked him around like it was really, really upsetting how they jerked him around for week after week after week.
Oh, really?
Bringing him back for callbacks, and I remember he'd come over and he'd sit in my kitchen, and my mom always had fresh fruit, and he loved fruit, so he would sit there and he'd eat whatever fruit was in the basket, and my mother would counsel him, telling him, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I had this picture of her trying to console him, and then of course finally they bit the bullet, and they hired him as a featured player originally. He wasn't a primetime player.
Right.
He was a featured player for maybe 4 weeks, and they just knew this guy's got to be, a primetime player. Because he was the best thing to happen to that show since the days of Belushi and Aykroyd.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you on that. That's great. That's a great story. I appreciate you telling me that. You also, I want to know, I've watched you and I've listened to you, and I think you're amazing. I mean, when you were to get back with Imus, you've done like 75 characters and like thousands of bits, and I remember them, but I actually wanted to go back into the archives and watch them again. And I have to say, you were a pretty good looking woman there. I mean, when you said that drag queen did your makeup, I have to tell you, between the makeup and the wig, you looked pretty good, Rob.
Yeah, I dress up nice. I clean up pretty good.
You do. You really do.
I embrace my British heritage, and I do the cross-dressing thing and classic British pantomime, I guess.
Well, I have to tell you, I enjoy the characters you do. As I was telling you, I am a character actress. I love putting on wigs and transforming myself. You've done characters such as Paula Deen and The Godfather and Margaret Thatcher and Hulk Hogan and Larry Flint and Bob Ross. I watched it the other day. I'm like piddling myself. It's too friggin' funny. I mean, it's just, and you really, really become these characters. And I have to say, I so appreciate what you do because you're so good at it.
Thank you.
Really are.
I was always inspired by Jonathan.
I love it's. Listen, it's magic, and you do it 100%. You bring everything to the table 100%, and after a while watching it, you're like, I'm thinking it's the real person. Until you put your little funny twist on it, and then you're like, oh yeah, it is Rob.
That's what you strive for, when you're doing a character, you want to try to
absolutely
way possible, Jonathan Winters was always a huge influence on me. I used to love when he would just go off and do unbelievable characters, and he'd just make all these real specific choices. I mean, one of the things you learn, at least I learned in acting class, was that the more specific you are, the better you can be, and that the more universal it is. Strangely enough, it's the truth. And he was so specific about. It was funny. I was talking with Dick Cavett about this, and he was saying even the way he would say words would be so specific. Like he would do a thing where he did the Frankenstein sketch he would do, and it was Dr. Harbison. It wasn't like Dr. Smith or Dr. Miller. It was like Dr. Harbison, but it was just the way that Jonathan Winters did stuff like that.
Yeah.
He was very, very specific, and I used to love when they would just put him in a. I think he did a show where they put him in an attic with just a whole bunch of crap around, and he would pick stuff up and just launch into these characters.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I ever saw was the Frank Sinatra roast, which is on YouTube, I think.
Yes, it is.
Came out and played Frank Sinatra's bus driver, and just laid everybody out. And there was no script; it was just off the top of his head. And
amazing.
He did this thing where he said, "No, I'm driving a bus, and Frank sees a guy on the side of the road selling dogs. So made me pull over, and we bought a dog, and it started to snow, and Frank put the put the dog up on the hood of the bus, so it would look like it was a Mack truck, and of course the dog got kind of caught up in the windshield wipers, and then the snow, and woo, 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 and Sinatra just like turns to jelly. Everyone just.
Oh my God!
Just one of the funniest
things.
So
funny.
So great.
So I have to ask you. I mean, out of all these characters you've done and you can do, I mean, do you have a favorite? Do you have like a top 3 or?
Whichever one got the most laughs at the time was the one that would have been my favorite. I mean,
okay, that's fair.
I always loved doing The Godfather because The Godfather is one of my favorite movies of all time, and doing Don Corleone's take on the world was a pretty fruitful way to go. Pretty fruitful take. I like doing Larry Flint. I always tend to do these voices, celebrity voices that can never help me. It's not like I do mainstream people. But I like doing Larry Flint because it was so wrong. It was just so wrong and so politically incorrect, and making fun of a paraplegic. It just, I don't know, that always made
it was fun. I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's like you wonder if you can get away with something like that, like today. I mean, it's like, so like, I mean, you think about like All in the Family and things that was said back then that, everyone's a little delicate now. And it's as comics, it's hard because we see the funny in everything most of the time. And, it's like we want to say something and it's hard. It's like now it's kind of like you have to censor yourself a little bit, I
mean, you try to find something that's universal, something that people can all relate to.
Absolutely.
The way you do, at least the way that I do it, the process I would use is I would do as much backstory on a character as possible. I mean, if you're not doing this celebrity, let's say you're creating your own original character. Like I had a blues guy, blind Mississippi white boy, Pig Feet Dupree. I came up with a whole biography of him and where he was born and, his first gigs. And
Pig's Feet Dupree. You know what? Wait, hold that thought, Rob. I have to take a quick break from my sponsors. When we come back, we're going to come back and talk about Pig's Feet Dupree. Okay? Don't go away, everybody. We're going to hear from my sponsors. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Tavolo Kitchen and Pizza, located at 1919 Wantaw Avenue in Wantaw. Hey, there's something for every night of the week. Tuesdays, pasta night. Wine Wednesdays. Friday, live music from 7 to 10. Sunday, brunch. So check them out at 516-308-4892 or www.tavolokitchen.com. They're also on Instagram. They do catering and private parties. So where do you want to go tonight?
Are you bored?
Oh my God!
Hold on tight. We're gonna coast us.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight. You got nothing better else to do, right? This is it, Monday Night Tea Time, and I'm with Rob Bartlett. We were just talking about his characters. Rob is a comedian, an actor, a writer, an impressionist, and he was with IMS for 31 years. The man has done over 75 characters and all these bits, and we were talking about Pig's Feet Dupree before we went to break, and it's funny because you just posted something on Facebook to the Beatles song Yellow Submarine, and it's called Corona Quarantine, correct?
Yep.
But when you did Pig's Feet Dupree, back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, you actually did a quarantine song.
Yes, that was for Ebola, I think.
Yeah, and I found it very ironic that you wrote that then, and it actually can, you could sing that one today too, and it.
Actually, I wound up redoing it for my podcast, the Rob Bartlett Radio Comedy Hour, and just updated it a little bit to take out the Ebola references and make them Corona references, and then put it up on the Rob Bartlett Radio Comedy Hour YouTube page. So yeah, it still worked. It was still song parody is one of the things that I used to love doing the most on Imus. So
Yes. Yeah.
music has always loomed large in my legend. So
yes. And you sing, you can hold a note, you can hold a tune. I want to know, how did you go from, well, first of all, I want to tell everyone how you and I met. You and I met a few years ago. I was involved with Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, raising money for Crohn's and Colitis. I ran 2 half marathons. I walked one to raise money for a great cause. And they do another kind of sister chapter is Take Steps. Mm-hmm. And I met you in Massapequa, and I think actually your son was there that day. I think I met him as well.
Probably, yeah.
And we were talking because you and he,
yes,
both have Crohn's, correct?
Yep.
And you've been actually involved in the foundation for a long time.
Yeah, on the board, one of the trustees. The Long Island chapter is pretty amazing. They do some great work. The Take Steps.
They do.
Every year in May is a huge event, and they're getting a lot of support from the community. And they last year was a little tough. It was pouring rain, so that was a little
yes,
put a little bit of a dent in the festivities. Yes. But it's amazing how people really get behind it and raise an awful.
Well, I had a kind of like. No one directly in my family had it, but I know people who have people who I know had Crohn's or colitis or IBS, and I was trying to
knows somebody. Nobody.
Yeah, because I try to explain 1 out of 200 people have it, mm-hmm. and it's a bathroom issue. Not a lot of people are excited to talk about bathroom issues, but a lot of people go undiagnosed because they think they just have a sensitive stomach. And then they find out later on, and they're able to seek the, proper medical care that they need. But I do want people to know that the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation is a wonderful foundation. And they have a camp for kids. And my girlfriend at 13 had to have his colon removed. So he had a colostomy bag since he's 13. And this is what he knows and grew up with. And he said when he went to the camp, I think it's called Camp Oasis, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He said it was the first time he felt normal
to
be around other kids like him. So they do great stuff. So everyone could look into that too, and look into Teen Challenge, because I never thought I can do a half marathon, but they train you for weeks to do it, and it's something that I loved, and I'll always have my Teen Challenge family to keep in touch with. But I just want to tell everyone how you and I met. And we'll probably be there in May.
2 of my other sons actually participated in the Team Challenge. They did the half marathon in Vegas.
The rock and roll. That's the rock and roll half marathon.
Yeah, they did it in honor of their brother. So.
That's great. Yeah. That's fabulous. So I wanted to know, how did you transition? Because I want everyone to know that, you did comedy for a very long time, but then you transitioned and you were on Letterman and you were on Conan, but then you transitioned more into television and Broadway. What came first for you, and how did that happen?
Broadway came first, actually. I mean, I got into comedy in late 70s with the idea that it would lead to acting. Because at the time, Robin Williams, Steve Martin, there were these comics that were getting these development deals, and they were getting TV and film roles. And I thought this was a great way of doing that, and all the networks were giving out development deals for all the comics, it seemed. And so that was my idea, that I would eventually get into acting that way. And it was, I think it was in 97 or 98. I was headlining at the Sands in Vegas. It was the last act on that stage before they blew it up.
Wow.
Same stage that the Rat Pack had been on. I actually got
so you were there the last week. I think Bobby was there too. Bobby Collins was there too also the last week.
Yeah. And they blew it up. And I got to stay in the JFK suite, with the original shag carpeting. And while I was there, a Broadway producer by the name of Mitchell Maxwell, he had done Damn Yankees with Jerry Lewis on Broadway, and he also owned couple of off-Broadway theaters, and he won a lot of money on the roulette wheel and was feeling good and walked into the show. And I guess he'd recognized me from Imus. He'd listened to Imus. Mm-hmm. And thought, this would be great in one of my theaters. And the idea was for me just to do my stand-up at an off-Broadway theater because they were starting to use stand-ups in a theatrical venue at that time. And so after, we had a couple of meetings and I thought, well, you know what, maybe not just do my stand-up act because, my stand-up act is characters, basically. I do very little observational stuff. And if I do observational stuff, it's usually connective tissue to the next character. And that's the way I always was. It started out with props and characters and then it just evolved into characters.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, why don't I try to utilize the characters and make some kind of a story, to stitch it all together.
Right.
And so I wrote a script, which was kind of like a producer's-ish sketch about a stand-up comic who brings his act to Broadway. And the idea was that the producers discovered that they would make more money on the insurance if they had hired a hitman to take me out. And I wouldn't eventually get to Broadway, but they would make more money than it was convoluted, whatever. And then that evolved into a thing which was based on the old Jonathan Winter show, where instead of an attic, it was a garage. And I was cleaning out my garage. I was on the eve of my 40th birthday and was feeling a midlife crisis. I was at a career standstill and, coming to terms with the kids getting older. And it has this little biographical, semi-autobiographical thing. And
right.
absentee father and coming to grips with that and yada, 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 yada. And it opened out of town in Stamford, Connecticut at the Rich Forum as Have a Nice Life. And we kind of got mixed reviews. And then we went to... we woodshedded it over the summer. They replaced the director. They brought on Jack O'Brien, who had directed the Damn Yankees for Mitchell.
Oh, wow.
And also eventually went on to direct Hairspray and, a number of other huge musical hits. And they got him to direct More to Love, a Big Fat Comedy, which it was then called. And we had they decided that instead of off-Broadway, all of a sudden a Broadway theater became available. And it was the Eugene O'Neill Theater, which is right across the street from the Ambassador Theater, which is where Chicago, the musical, is playing. And we were at the Eugene O'Neill. We did 16 previews and 4 performances. And the pull quote from the Times was, "Avert your eyes." So we didn't run. I had a great cast. Dana Reeve, the wonderful, incredible Dana Reeve played my wife. Joyce Van Patten played my agent. And the audiences loved it, but it was not deemed Broadway worthy.
Right.
And so I went into a funk for about a year. I'd not booked any gigs because I was ostensibly going to be on Broadway. And I, kind of was licking my wounds for about a year. And then I got asked to do a City Center Encores thing, which is, they do musicals that won't normally get a revival. And they do 2 weekends of performances. And it's 2 weeks from being cast to rehearsal to the performances. You win a Broadway musical. It's like being Shannon. It's great.
Yeah.
It was Golden Boy. And I got a small part as Roxy, one of the boxer's promoters, managers. And Walter Bobby was the director, and he said, I need a little transition here because we need to drop these huge curtains as the set for the bad guy's apartment. But it's too long, and we needed just a little bit of dialogue, just moving on. So ad-lib something. And so the curtains came down, these 30-foot curtains came down, and as I walked past it, I took them in my hand, and I kind of went like this, and I went, "Would you look at this verkackte Schmatte?" And Walter, always remembered me as the verkackte Schmatte guy. So fast forward a couple of months, and I get cast in an off-Broadway show called Tabletop. Actually,
Tabletop.
Off Broadway originally, and it was a real-time kind of dark comedy about a commercial director, TV commercial director, not a guy who did like the people, gallivanting about or whatever. He did the product shots, the zooming on the hamburger or the pizza or the beer pouring into the glass. And it was 90 minutes real time, straight through, no intermission, of trying to get this one particular difficult shot. And it was a really he was at a crossroads in his career, and he was going to lose out to all these other. It was, the stakes were very, very high, and the character was like this awful, awful tyrant of a guy.
But you actually won a drama desk award for tabletop, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, it was weird. It was like all of a sudden, I
that's
get
incredible.
this legitimate acting gig, and I get an award for it.
Wow.
So after that closed, we went off Broadway off Broadway, and we were supposed to be going to Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
But then the new producer, the woman who had taken over for the original producers, who was going to bring it to Broadway, she lost her money all her money in a pyramid scheme, famous pyramid scheme with a very famous guy who's in jail.
Mm.
And so we didn't want to go to Broadway.
Right.
And so I'm having lunch one day with Joyce Van Patten, and in the restaurant is Walter Bobby, and he remembered me, this Fishmonte guy, and Joyce had worked with him, and she called him over, and the three of us sat and we had lunch, and it was fine. Next week I get a call from my manager, Harry. He says, I just got a call from the casting agent who cast More to Love, Jay Binder, and he was the one who got me in Golden Boy to begin with Walter. He said that Walter Bobby has asked you to audition for Chicago for the part of Amos. I said, oh. And Amos is, if anyone knows the show, Amos is the dream part of dream parts. It is just the greatest part ever, because you have 3 scenes in the first act, you have 3 scenes in the second act, you have a show-stealing number in the second act, and you get them laughing and you get them crying. It's the perfect.
So that's how you got Chicago.
Perfect character role. And
wow.
What happened was Brad Garrett was supposed to be playing Amos, but just before he was going into rehearsal, he got cast in the Jackie Gleason TV movie. So Walter was stuck, and he had to have an Amos in 2 weeks. So he said, have Rob go down and see the Wednesday matinee. I'd already seen the show once before with Joel Gray. I thought, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he said, and when he's done, have him go up on stage and audition for the musical director. I see the matinee, and I'm blown away again, and the crowd leaves, and the ushers are trying to get me out of the theater. I said, well, no, I'm supposed to meet Mr. Billig. I'm supposed to audition for Bob Billig, and I go up on stage. Bob Billig comes out, and he has me come backstage. I get up on stage, and in the way it's staged, because it also came out of Encores, the band, the orchestra is on the stage. It's a big bandstand on stage. And stuff is done in front of the bandstand. So the piano's right there, and he sat down at the piano and started to play Cellophane. And I sang Cellophane. And that was it. And he thanked me, and we shook hands, and I thought, well, that was kind of cool. It was like an audition on a Broadway stage,
It's like a flashback for me of the movie Tootsie, when he's up there auditioning, right, on an actual stage in front of the director.
It was very surreal, and then I'm in the car driving home, and the phone rings, and it's my manager.
You saying to yourself, did that really just happen?
It was, yeah. But I'm not even home yet, and my manager calls and says, you got the part. And so I go into rehearsals like almost the very next day, and
wow.
I was in and out of that show over the course of 6 years. I think I did it 5 or 6 different times with different casts. I did it with Melanie Griffith. I did it with a whole bunch of just amazing.
Wow. And you also did Little Shop. You also did Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
And you actually did The Odd Couple. And
Brad Garrett, which was kind of like it came full circle. Brad Garrett was also one of the poker players in The Odd Couple. So it was
that's crazy. And then How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And that's something that I saw. The playbill is downstairs on my wall, because I frame my playbills, and I have a Broadway section downstairs in my basement.
Nice.
So I have them all hanging up. Yeah. And which show were you with the longest? Was it with Chicago?
I think if you added up all the show, all the performances I did, would certainly be Chicago, because, like I said, I was in and out of it a number of times. Little Shop didn't get the run I thought it deserved. We didn't last a year. The critics were not very kind to it. They thought it should have stayed a simple off-Broadway show. They didn't like the fact that they kind of blown it up big for a Broadway stage.
Yeah.
Odd Couple was not really received all that well, which was, we got extended because it was a limited run. And then How to Succeed ran about a little less than a year and a half, I think.
Yeah. It was another great show. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, Dan Radcliffe. I could actually do a duet with Dan Radcliffe, and then later on with Nick Jonas. It was just
it's crazy, right?
Am I really here?
Listen, everyone, stay tuned. Don't go away. We're going to hear from my sponsors again. We'll be right back with Rob Bartlett.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Tavolo Kitchen and Pizza, located at 1919 Wantaw Avenue in Wantaw. Hey, there's something for every night of the week. Tuesdays, pasta night, wine Wednesdays, Friday, live music from 7 to 10, Sunday brunch. So check them out at 516-308-4892 or www.tavolokitchen.com. They're also on Instagram. They do catering and private parties. So where do you want to go tonight?
Why don't we go to Coasters?
Oh, cool. I heard it's a great place. Let's check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Oh my God.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Tea Time. I'm here with the very talented entertainer, Rob Bartlett is here, and I'm so happy and blessed that you, and I want to say personally thank you for doing my show. It's sad that we're all home right now. Like I said, we're under house arrest without the ankle monitor on, and I do appreciate you doing this for me. Before we left for the break, we were talking about you doing Broadway, and then you actually went into, you did TV. You've been doing TV. I was seeing you on TV. I'm like, hey, there's Rob. You did Ugly Betty. You did Law and Order SUV, which I have to tell you something really quick, really funny. I do acting. I've done a few independent films. I landed a Hotels.com commercial. And I'm excited about what's happening for me, especially at this age in life, because I say I don't care if I'm 100 or 90, and I say I fall in and I can't get up, or where's the beef? Something's going to eventually happen. Mm-hmm. And my daughter, I was like, Val, I'm doing this, and Val, I'm doing that. And she says to me, when you're on Law and Order SUV, SVU, come talk to me then. Like, okay, so I don't make it until I'm on Law and Order, Rob. But you on Law.
Eventually, every actor in New York has to do a Law and Order SVU.
Absolutely, that's what I was told. My friend David's been on it about 4 times, and you on SVU. You played a lawyer. You on The Good Wife. You on Elementary. So tell me, because I know doing stand-up and doing shows, there's nothing like a live audience, and that self gratification and that instant gratification, So, how is it for you, kind of like transitioning from Broadway to TV? Because I know with TV and movies, there's a lot of waiting around.
Nothing is really work if it's something that you love doing. So it doesn't really feel like work. And I would gladly have a steady gig doing an episodic show here in New York, because they're shooting so many of them now.
Yeah. It's not like you have to go to LA anymore like back in the day. There's a lot here.
And it's it's easy work, and it's fun work, and you work with professionals, and everyone respects everybody else, and it's a really great working atmosphere. At least I've been lucky enough to have those. When I got SVU, it was because they had come to see Tabletop, because the guy who designed the set is the production designer.
Okay.
Of SVU, and so that's how they got to see me, and that's how I got brought in to read for. Initially, I read for an under 5 part. One of those guys unloading the truck. Oh, Jason Cleve? Yeah, I know him. He's kind of kept to himself, one of those type of parts.
Right.
Wound up being a defense attorney and came back for 5 episodes. I actually got
Yeah.
to defend Henry Winkler. The Fonz was one of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the Good Wife again, just a great professional experience. Got to be another sleazy lawyer for 3 episodes of that one. Got to be scenes with Juliana Margulies and who is the nicest, most generous actress you could ever possibly want to work with.
Yeah.
Until you meet Lucy Liu, and she's in the same thing, and Johnny Lee Miller on Elementary. It's like, doing these shows that you watch, and then all of a sudden you're on them.
Right.
And I got to play for the first time a cop, and I've wanted the entire 40 years of my career to play a cop, and I finally played a cop on Elementary, and it was actually a really decent part because it was 5 episodes in a row. And it was,
which is nice. It's nice when it's consecutive.
Yeah. It was a nice story arc. I mean, and I wound up not being such a nice guy in the last episode. It was really good. Aidan Quinn, my last scene on the show was this dramatic scene that we shot on location at a cop bar in Queens, and it was just great. It was just really, really great. It's a great, It beats poking yourself in the eye with a sharp stick. And it beats, being a janitor in the city, which is what I did when I first started doing stand-up. So
let's talk about what you're doing now. You're doing the Rob Bartlett Radio Comedy Hour. And I want you to tell people how they could see it or watch it. I know you were actually doing something on a stage with a bunch of other
It started out, the idea that I had was to be a combination of Saturday Night Live and those old time radio shows where people would stand in front of microphones holding their scripts. Like Jack Benny and all those other things. So it's kind of going to be a melding of those two things. And
I think I thought it was a genius idea, and I loved watching it, and I thought everyone was great.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I don't know how many episodes we got to do of that before. We had a live audience, and I don't know how many we eventually did before they told us we couldn't use the stage anymore. This was through ABC radio at the time. This is after I had been fired by ABC when I left, and then they said, "Oh, we want to do something with you. We want to do something with you." And so I had this idea for this podcast, and so we did it. And so it was available, as a downloadable podcast that you listen to, but you could also watch it, on a Facebook stream. And now the episodes are up on Rob Bartlett Radio Comedy Hour YouTube page. And we eventually, from that, we decided we were going to do it, just as a radio show. So we did it in a radio studio. And instead of acting it out, on stage in front of microphones, we sat in the studio and did it. We did that for a while. And then they decided that they couldn't have us be in the studio anymore because there was some insurance thing or something. And there were too many people in the cast and some kind of, yank job excuse.
Okay.
And so I started doing it from home. And I do it, here from my room, and my headphones and my laptop, and I just do it there. And it's by myself. And sometimes I play clips from the old Imus show, and sometimes I play clips from the Rob Bartlett not-for-profit TV special that I did for public TV.
Yes, you actually won an award for that too, didn't you? You won 2 Emmys. You won 2 Emmys.
Yeah.
2 Emmys for it was called Not-for-Profit Television Special, correct?
Right. And sometimes I'll play clips from that, and I just recorded one just before we got on together. It's my May the 4th Be With You episode, all about.
Yeah, I saw that pic. It was great.
So and that's you can get that wherever podcasts are sold.
So, well, that's the whole thing. The Rob Bartlett Comedy Hour that you said it's on YouTube, and then how often are you doing it and putting them out? Are you doing weekly?
I started doing it weekly. A couple of weeks I did every day. I've been kind of toying around trying to find the right thing to do with it. The Comedy Hour name is a joke. It's never an hour, at least not since we stopped doing it live for the audience. But it's always, it's always got some laughs in it. And let
me say, I when I was first approached to do this show, I was like, at first I was like, I knew that doing an hour by yourself is not easy. It's just not.
No.
You have to have a lot of content to do an entire hour. And a friend of mine who's actually on Strong Island Radio, because Bobby has Strong Island Entertainment is the umbrella, and then underneath it he has Strong Island Television, Strong Island Radio, Strong Island Movies, Strong Island. He's got everything under it. And a friend of mine, John Santo, who shows on After Mine on a podcast, he did his first show an hour by himself, and he said towards the end it was rough. So the second week he said to me, we were in the studio, and he said, do you mind coming on and being like a guest co-host? And I said, no, I don't mind at all. And he said, that was great. The hour went fast. You have someone to bounce off of. It's very different when you're doing it by yourself. It's not an easy thing to do. So, kudos to you. But yeah, it's funny when you say, it's not a whole hour, it is the hour.
Yeah, but I'm doing that, and I been editing a short that I made a couple of years ago. I did an animated short called Dr. Mantis, Insect Analyst, and Praying Mantis, Psychiatrist, and it went on the film festival circuit. We actually won a couple of awards.
That's great!
Internationally, I know we won one in Nice, France. And,
wow!
Yeah, I wrote it with Andrew Smith, who used to be a head writer at SNL. And did one of the voices in it, and so I'm working on one now that came out of an idea I had. I was going to do something kind of like Comedians in Cars Having Coffee, but it was called Slice of Life, and it was basically me walking around Manhattan with a celebrity and then go for a slice. And
that's great. I love it.
A bunch of people. We shot them all, and the one I did with Dick Cavett, I'm now editing to be a film short. I'm going to put it back on the circuit, and then I'm also I'm helping to develop a strip show, a Monday through Friday comedy strip show with a producer who is involved in the Academy Award winning O.J. Simpson documentary.
Okay.
So we're working on that, and the Rob Bartlett Comedy Hour.
So basically, you
YouTube
do
channel.
have, you listen. We're all going through this, like we said. We're all home, and there were a lot of people. I think I said this last week. There were a lot of people who are working out there, and they're like, "Oh, I wish we had a 4-day work week. I wish I could spend more time with my family." And guess what?
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for.
It's the truth. So it's nice that you have, certain things going on that you can, that you're working on, which is good. And now we have to all wait until things are lifted in order to get back out there. I actually, I auditioned for Danny Aiello before he passed, was a big fan of a show called The Italian Chicks. And, he endorsed the show, and I auditioned for it, and I'm now officially an Italian chick, and it's not just stand-up comedy. It's actually almost like a variety show, because there's not only stand-up, but we also sing song parodies, and we do a bunch of other stuff. Danny loved the show, and like I said, he was nice enough to endorse it. But we just rescheduled one of our shows because we were supposed to be in Myrtle Beach next weekend for Mother's Day. And we just rescheduled a show in Jersey for November. So I think a lot of people right now are just trying to figure out, how far out we have to go, and then how we're all going to, go back to comedy and or acting. I'm in an independent film that's on hold right now until, we could figure out what we're doing. But what's really nice about yours is that you have, like you said, we have stuff to focus on or look forward to.
Yeah,
which is great.
You have the time to devote to it. I mean, doing all the stuff that I've been blessed enough to be able to do, it did have its downside. I mean, there was one summer when I was rehearsing Odd Couple with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick. That's when we were doing the Amish show from New Jersey. We were in Secaucus.
Yes.
We were simulcast on MSNBC. And so I was driving from Farmingdale to Secaucus, New Jersey every morning. I had to be in the makeup chair by 5 a.m. So I had to leave the house at 4.
I was going to say, what time did you get up and leave You're at
We were doing
home.
full-on prosthetic makeup. Like when I did Dr. Phil, it had to have a ball cap and a fake mustache and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I would leave MSNBC, after the show was over. I forgot out of costume and makeup around 11:30 noon, right to rehearsal on 42nd Street for The Odd Couple, and then Neil Simon asked if I would do him a favor and cover for the guy who was playing Herman in Sweet Charity around the corner at the theater where Christina Applegate was doing Sweet Charity.
Wow.
The guy was playing Herman. The guy who owned the dance hall was not he was ill basically, and they were bringing in Newman from Seinfeld to play the part in the fall.
Yes.
So they wanted me to cover that period and that summer, and so I would go from rehearsal of Odd Couple to Sweet Charity at the Hirschfeld, and then I would drive home and get home around midnight and take a shower and sleep for 2 hours and then get back in the car and go back.
Oh my
I did that
gosh.
the entire summer. And if that didn't
Wow. You did that for 2 months?
I couldn't do it now.
No, you did at the time. You did it that long?
Yeah, because I was stupid.
You know what it is that because we do what we love, we learn to juggle. We learn to juggle a lot,
Sure.
and try to be in a lot of places,
Sure.
not at one time, but, within the day.
We're also very fortunate. I think you have the same situation that I. We have a very, very supportive spouse and family. There are a lot of times when you go to work when there's, family events and stuff like that. And, it's not easy,
Yeah.
You try your best to try and be the, two places at once if you can and do what you can. I mean, and you got to learn sometimes to say no, what's more important.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's the whole thing. It's, we talked about before, it's like, your priorities have to be there.
Yeah.
And, if it's, it's hard because, you have a lot of holidays, a lot of celebrations.
I was rehearsing Little Shop when my first son went to college. I couldn't take him to college. And I regret that to this day. I couldn't get out of the rehearsals. And,
Right.
you miss out on stuff, which is part of the sacrifice you make. But fortunately, I haven't had to make too many of those. Unfortunately, I have a very
Right. No,
supportive
that's
mother
great.
who,
That's great. Listen, we have another couple of minutes before we wrap up. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening and tuning in. Please like the show and share it. Share this. That way other people can see it as well. I want to thank everyone, like I said, for tuning in, and Bruno and everybody, all my regulars watching and listening. I appreciate it. Rob Bartlett is a wonderful comedian and actor and impressionist and writer. And, You've been doing this a very long time, and you do it well, my friend. And I look forward to what the future has in store for you. That's for sure.
Thank you.
All good things. All good
Italian
things.
chicks gets rolling again.
I'm sorry.
I'm hoping the Italian chicks gets rolling again.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're definitely going to be rolling. I mean, like I said, we had so many shows lined up, and it's like I said, it's just a matter of being patient. I think we all have to be patient. Before we go, I just want to make a quick announcement. You saw me at Tavolo, and Coasters are my sponsors. And I just want you to know that Coasters, you can pick up food there on Saturdays and Sundays. And Tavolo Kitchen is doing pickup and deliveries as well. I just wanted to get that in because I never got that in.
Listen, they deliver to Farmingdale?
Why not? I know. They might. I don't know. I know Coasters you have to pick up. I don't think they're doing deliveries. But I can make a phone call for you. Listen, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. It was such a pleasure. Blessed that you did my show and that you're here with me. And I want to thank Rob Bartlett from the bottom of my heart for being on my show and talking. And please tune in to see him on YouTube. It's the Rob Bartlett Comedy Hour on YouTube. And also you can go to his page and, just scroll down and see what he has going on there, because you'll hear
Robbio, or we're all over the place.
Robbio on Twitter. Got that?
Robbio, ROBIO, and the Rob Bartlett Radio Comedy Hour podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
That's it. Wherever you get your podcast. So everyone tune in, look for Rob. Rob, thank you so much for doing this with me. I appreciate it. You could stay right there. We're going to go. Thank you everyone for tuning in. God bless. Stay safe. And I'll see you next week.